I assume you can all agree with me that Equestria is a pretty massive place, and as the seasons go on, we're able to visit a lot of different locations all throughout. From the snowy lands of the Crystal Empire to the deserts of Appaloosa, there's a perfect place in Equestria for every pony, and it shows. There are a lot of characters that seem to live in their ideal spot, like Brayburn in Appaloosa, or all the fancy rich ponies in Canterlot, and all the gullible ones in our town. And that made me think of G5, as we only ever really see the three main locations there, that being Maritime Bay, Zephyr Heights, and the Bridlewood. So where in the G4 version of Equestria would some of the main ponies from G5 live? Now, the easy answer would be, oh yeah, they'd all live together in Ponyville, just like Twilight and her friends do, and call it a day there. But that's boring, and then the video would only be like a minute long, and I ain't about that. Also, yes, apparently we're still doing outro jokes in 2025. It's way more fun to think about where they would end up if they were on their own. We'll be going over all of the main 6 from G5, including some extra side characters. So let's begin with the Princess of Plot Armor, Sunny Star Scout herself. Within G5, Sunny represents the element of hope, and they're always looking to make more friends with everyone. Therefore, I think Sunny would fit in perfectly in Ponyville. Everyone is super friendly, knows each other, and it's a very welcoming community for every creature. Then again, that is more of a safe option, and I think Sunny would want more of a challenge or somewhere she can make an impact on the world, like we see her do in the movie. So, you could place her in Canterlot, because that's where all the ponies in charge are, meaning she could attempt to make changes through official means by bribing, sorry, I meant getting into conversation with the politicians there. But honestly, Sunny seems to want to make an impact through her actions, more so than through official means. So we're looking for a place on the map that could use some hope and friendship, but is also not political enough to attempt having to go through an official system. I personally think Kludgetown fits that description really well. For those of you unfamiliar, that's the desert town from the movie where they first meet Capper. It's a very sketchy town where nobody trusts each other, and I think Sunny would see that as a challenge to improve. Next up, we have every pony's favourite bouncy ball. It's Izzy. Izzy represents the element of creativity through all her wacky contraptions she always makes. And I personally think Izzy would prefer living at a place with friends that are like-minded creatures over a more challenging environment. There are 2 locations that immediately came to mind. The first one being the Peaks of Peril with the Kirin. During the Sounds of Silence episode, we already see how creative they used to be before they got silenced, performing shows and singing regularly, etc. I think Izzy would be able to reignite that spark in them and have a great time in the village, especially with how similar it already is to the Bridlewood. However, I ultimately ended up going with the Hippogriffs at Mount Eris in Sequestria. In the movie, we already see how creative they want to be, making things out of seashells and putting on performances. Plus, Izzy and Silverstream would likely really hit it off, and I so want to see what would come from that. Now, from an ADHD goofball to an ADHD influencer, it's Princess Pip Petals. Now, I personally don't think Pip has 2 separate places where she would fit in the best and where she could make the most impact, because I think for Pip these 2 places are the exact same location. It's Manhattan, baby! The city all about the newest trends and becoming or being some pony famous. Pip with her flair and personality would rule the place within a week, not gonna lie. Manhattan also seems to be a city that wants to live up to really high expectations when it comes to fashion, food, and entertainment. I think Pip representing her element of confidence would make a serious difference in Manhattan's almost toxic expectations of everything, especially with a royal status. I genuinely think she would really have a good time living there. Next up, it's time for the sister, also known as Zip. The first thing I thought of with Zip was, yeah, she goes to Cloudsdale, right? And I think that's probably because of how closely I compare her to Rainbow Dash, but the longer I thought about it, the less it made sense. Zip is a Pegasus, sure, but her element of courage doesn't really seem applicable in Cloudsdale. The same goes for her detective skills. If anything, she would fit in more in Ponyville, because, you know, something weird happens there about 26 times a season. Then again, as we see in Slice of Life, the Ponyville residents don't really seem to care about most of those threats, as the main 6 are there to take care of it anyway. So we're looking for a place that has plenty of room for adventure and investigation, where friendship doesn't even have to be the main focus. And I think our answer isn't even properly shown on this map, and that would be the town of Sonambula. With all the adventures Daring Do has in the area, I could definitely see Zip helping Daring Do on her quests to liberate ancient artifacts that definitely don't belong to the locals or native population. Now, thinking about that some more, I think Zip could actually play the part of an antagonist in a Daring Do book. Now picture this. Daring Do enters another ancient temple, riddled with traps, puzzles, and other sort of shenanigans. only to find Zip at the very end of it all, who is ready for a fight to protect the ancient goblet of Insert Nam of Goder from being taken by Daring Do and her own plans to protect the world. I think the book could be called something like Daring Do starts working for the British Museum. From whatever that was, let's take a step back to the chill and conventionally attractive Dragon Dad, Hitch. For Hitch, I think there's actually 4 interesting answers. The first one is easy. Move Hitch to Sonnambula so he can live with his girlfriend, which is cute, but not that interesting. The second option is to move Hitch to Rainbow Falls so he can live here with me. The other 2 options are the regular best fit and challenging ones. I personally think Hitch as a sheriff prefers comfort over challenge, which we can see in the movie with how hard he tries to stop Sunny from disturbing the peace. If he'd been more a fan of challenge, I was thinking about placing him in Griffinstone, since Hitch represents the element of kindness, and Griffinstone is shown to be anything but kind, it would be the perfect challenge for him. For the best fit, however, I was originally thinking Appaloosa, just because of the sense of community it has. Though, considering Hitch is a sheriff, and I doubt Sheriff Silverstar is retiring anytime soon, we might need to look elsewhere. It took me a bit of looking at this map to realize that the answer isn't actually on here. I am going to place Hitch in Hope Hollow, the town featured in the Rainbow Road Trip special. Before the special, there was a lack of community, but it seems to be more realistically fixable compared to some place like Griffinstone. After all, the main 6 are able to do it in just the span of a 40-minute special. If we're talking after the special, however, Hitch would fit right in the small community of kind Canadian ponies. From the special, it doesn't really seem like the town has any form of authority besides the mayor. Given they probably don't need it, then again, what town in Equestria does? Regardless, I think Hitch would really enjoy living there. Since Hope Hollow isn't on the actual map, I'm just gonna place this pin all the way out there, because that's where it is located on an unofficial expanded map of Equestria that I often use for D&D. Last but not least, depending on who you ask at least, it's Misty! As the element of empathy, Misty would fit in well in a lot of places. During the show, we see how much she struggles with following Opaline's orders because of her own moral compass, to the point that it's the basis of her entire redemption arc. So, we're looking for a place that is very accepting and welcoming to every pony, doesn't force any social expectations on you to be good at something, and has a very catchy theme song. Wait, what? Yeah, no, Misty is definitely the kind of pony that would get lured into living in our town. And not gonna lie, with how anti-cutie mark Starlight is when she still ruled the town, having a grown-up pony there without a cutie mark would honestly be like having a prophet in the town. I don't think Misty would enjoy being in the spotlight like that, but what is she gonna do about it? Leave? However, as we know, the whole cult is exposed at the beginning of Season 5, and while most ponies decided to stay in our town, I don't think Misty would. So let's go back to the requirements I mentioned just a minute ago. We're looking for a place that requires or needs empathy, doesn't have many social expectations, and is very welcoming to every pony, and is not a cult. The one place that comes to mind is Seaward Shoals. If you don't know where that is, can't really blame you as we only ever see it twice in the entire show. Once during the Season 6 episode Pony Point of View, as it's the town where Rarity, Pinkie Pie, and Applejack departed on the boat on their great adventure. And then again in the Point of No Return in Season 9, where we see Twilight visit the former librarian in a retirement home there. The reason why I think this is such a good fit for Misty is because it appears to be a rather small, calm seaside village. Plus I could totally see Misty work in the retirement home there. I think she'd do really well with all the elderly ponies. Now, to quickly go over some of the side characters of the show, just for fun, and because I said so at the beginning, I think Alphabeetle would be looking for a nice spot to open up his tea shop. Somewhere quiet, but also not too quiet. I think the Kirin village after their silence has been lifted is a very good spot for him. Queen Haven would go straight to Canterlot and pretend like she owns the place, even though I doubt many ponies would take her seriously. She would live there whether she likes it or not, just because she thinks that's what expected of a queen. Though I think realistically she would enjoy a place like Ponyville a lot more, especially with how often she's in Maritime Bay during G5. And lastly, I could totally see Sprout living in and around Las Pegasus. With how impulsive and jealous he is, I could totally see him becoming a gambling addict. Sorry, I meant fall in love with the high-risk atmosphere of the city. Now that we've gotten all the characters from the show out of the way, let's take a look at some characters you suggested. Earlier this week I made a community post asking you guys to submit fictional characters from other franchises that you'd want to see live in Equestria. So let's grab a few suggestions and place them on a map without putting too much thought in. The first suggestion is Bill Cipher from Gravity Falls, made by Slippin' Jimmy 1012. Now I think a lot of you will agree with me that Bill Cipher is essentially the Discord of Gravity Falls, so let's dig deeper into that and say that Bill will follow Discord's footprints in the show. In the beginning, he would cause chaos all over Equestria, but eventually he'd get redeemed and maybe even form special bonds with ponies. Maybe have a pony in particular that he really likes. But you know, Fluttershy's already fucking Discord, so who else? Who's the next best thing? Now, as far as personality goes, the closest thing we have to Fluttershy I think is Limestone Pie, Pinky's sister. So let's just move Bill Cipher to the rock farm, shall we? The next suggestion comes from Senohoy8973, who asks about Big Jack Horner from Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. I think this one's quite easy. Big Jack tries the entire movie to collect all the magic and magic items for himself. So what place has the most magic? Probably Canterlot, right? So let's place him right there. Our next comment is by Blue Bright YT, who asks about Blitzy from Hell of a Boss. So, what do we know? Blitz absolutely loves horses. So we're looking for the place that has the most horse per horse, I guess? My mind immediately goes to a big city like Manhattan. There's ponies everywhere, and everyone probably hates each other just like actual Manhattan, which gives the IMP a lot of assassination targets to work with. Additionally, we know that Blitz loves exploiting royalty, and we already sent Pip there earlier this video, so it's a win-win in my book. The next one is SCP-682 by Prometheus Star. Now, I have no idea about SCPs, but this guy looks like he should stay as far away from ponies as physically possible. But if you ask him, he'd probably want to be as close to as many ponies as possible, someplace far away from escape routes like the water. And looking at the map, the Crystal Empire kind of fits that description. And, you know, maybe the crystal ponies have like a little extra crunch to them as far as taste goes, who knows? Next up, by Omar Vasquez 4075, is Spirit from that one Spirit movie. Now, I am probably the only brony that hasn't actually seen this movie, so just looking at the first page on Google, it looks like this movie is all about freedom and exploring, etc. So I'm probably going to place him somewhere in this open field towards the north, near Niagara Falls. There's a big open area to just live and exist in, I guess. Lastly, we have Hawkmoth from Miraculous Ladybug, and all of those words I don't think I would have ever expected myself to say in a single sentence. I have no idea what I'm looking at, I have no idea what this is from, but this guy just looks straight out of a comic book. Following the MLP logic, let's place him in Metropolis with all the power ponies. I'm sure he would make a great comic villain. And with that, we come to the end of this video. Make sure to keep an eye on the posts and polls on this channel, as they will likely be used for future videos as well. If you're subscribed to the channel, they will also show up in your subscription feed or on your home page, making it easier to participate. For now, thanks for watching.